Today I'm showing you how I do my fabric clusters. So more recently I've done some like this on my patchwork journals, and these tabs that you can put, they don't just have to be on the covers, you can use them on pages, you can use them as decorations, as accents, as, you know, anything you want really. Here's some more examples. All of mine, I say all, nearly all of them have torn edges because I like that look. There's another little tab down there. They're nearly all hand stitched because I like that look too, and also partly because I'm often too lazy to thread the sewing machine. So just some examples of clusters, fabric clusters or clusters. There's something else I call them and I can't remember now. That's silly, isn't it? This one's got a bit more hand stitching on it, so there's just some seed stitch in here and then a little tab down here. So there's just a few examples that I've used recently on my journals. You can also use them, I use them in all sorts of things. So these things I'm showing you aren't the be all and end all, but there's a collage, a fabric cluster in here on the back of this that I've used, stitched it together. There's a small one just here. There's bits, there's all sorts of little ones here through here. There's one up here. Here. There's one here. One here. This is one that I've stitched, layered and stitched together. Here's another one here. Another one here. There's a little tab there. There's another tab there that I've stitched. Here, collage, a fabric cluster, a tab. This one's gone out of shot. There's another bit of a cluster here and a tab here. Another tab here. That's a bit of a, oh, I don't know what you'd call that. It is layered. It is a bit of a cluster, but it's not as layered as they get. There's another little tab here. It's all layered and stitched. Another one up here. This book's not finished yet. There's another fabric cluster here. So a lot of these clusters, this is a fabric cluster, a lot of these clusters that are in this book, I did them separately and then I've added them. Some of them I've made specifically for the book. I mean, they've all been made for the book, but some of them were made outside as little clusters first before I added them. There's another one there. It's all hand stitched with running stitch. There's another one there with a tab on it. So there's lots of things you can use them for. I'll just move this out of the way. These ones here are slightly larger fabric clusters. So layers of fabrics, and I've stitched them on, stitched them, added accents. Some of them are more simple than others. And again, these can be used in your journals, they can be used as pockets, they can be used as pages, they can be used as all sorts of things. The possibilities are endless. These particular ones, these square ones, were influenced by Liz Kettle and her morning stitches, her slow stitch meditations. These are ones that I've prepared ready to stitch. They haven't been stitched yet. So there's those ones. Excuse me for a moment, I need a bit of a drink. It's very humid here. You can probably hear my dog panting. She's not coping with the heat. These ones here are more fabric clusters that I've done, that I use in my journals, and to make the last few of these I made into pouches. Added them. These ones are ready to stitch. I haven't stitched them yet. This one's been stitched up. That's the puppy dog you can hear. If you were wondering, she's having a drink. Another fabric cluster, larger one. Another fabric cluster. A lot of these fabrics I've dyed myself, so they're either indigo dyed or eco dyed. This one's with eucalyptus. This one's a rust dye. Linen with, yeah, all sorts of bits. There's more indigo and rust in this one. So again, these are just samples at the moment. They're not, I haven't turned them into anything yet. I might not, I might just pass them on as they are, but I think I'll make a few things with them. So there's a few more ideas. This one's in progress, and these ones are ready to be stitched. Here's one I did the other day. These are the smaller ones that I've been using on the front of my journals. So I like all these threads, and that's actually cheesecloth. Is that what it is? Cheesecloth? Is that what it's called? I've got a mental block now. I think it's cheesecloth. Here's another one that hasn't been stitched yet. That's ready to be stitched. Here's... Oh, I like this one. Hasn't been stitched yet, but ready to go. This one I've started to stitch. It's all layered up. Here's some that I've done for tabs. So the way I do these, you can either turn them over like this and use on, I didn't want to have to reach for another book. We'll just pretend this is the cover of a journal, and you can slide it on like this, and stitch it onto your journal page as a tab, or you can tear this piece off and just use that and stitch it on like that. Do whatever you want to do. These ones are quite versatile. So here's a few that I've done already. I like to have at least 3 layers of fabric. So this back piece, that's just a piece of felt, that one, acrylic felt. I like to have the main piece of fabric with at least 2 layers on top, and then I like to have some threads, not all the time. So this is a thread bundle, as you can see. This has got little bits of threads but not a big bundle, and then I like to leave these big knot bits hanging out at the back to give it more texture. Oops, get in focus there. It's got some beads and some sequins on that one. So a lot of these fabrics, this one has, as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of fabric on that one. And I like the texture, I like the layers. It depends how much energy I've got to, or what I want the final outcome to look like. There's 1, 2, 3, there's 4 layers on that one. Only 3 on that one. 1, 2, 3. There's a bit of upholstery fabric on this, and that's a bit of an old tea towel, and then a bit of satin from a wedding dress. This is a bit of curtain, an old curtain with some more layers on it. So this is a piece of fabric that I painted, or I think I actually mopped up something with it. There's all sorts of bits. A lot of these that I use for these are scrap fabrics. So I don't throw anything out, because as you can see, even these tiny little bits get used. This is scrap lace that I would have normally throw away. Another bit of scrap lace. So yeah, all sorts of bits that I've put together there. Those ones are pretty well ready to go. This is the next stage. So this has some stitching on it, but I like more than that. So that one's ready to get something else put on it. And then these bits are just layered, ready to be stitched. And you can see some of them, so for example, this only has 1 layer on it. This one has 2. So some of them are, I will add more. The ones that have only got 1 on, I feel need more layers. So, this one needs something else. But they haven't, none of them have been stitched. These ones have been stitched yet, so they're ready to start stitching. So that's what all these ones are, ready to be. And I just sit there. Sometimes I keep a bag with all my scraps in it. Well, it's not actually a bag, I've got baskets and containers and things. And when I'm sitting, like today when it's too hot to do anything, I get bits out and start organising them to start stitching. Now, on to how I start these. I usually start with a piece of base fabric. So here's some bits that I've saved. Some of these are bits that are, offcuts from sewing projects. sometimes I will pull out a piece of fabric. For example, I'll pull out a piece of fabric and cut some off to use, but I do try to use all my scraps first, unless there's something very specific that I'm after. I try and use my scrap pieces first. In saying that, when it's things specific that I'm after, it's usually things like this. So I want to put an accent and have the layered fabrics on. So what I normally do is start with something like, I don't know, something like this. This is a piece of calico that I've painted. And then I'll go and look for, these are ones that are ready to be started. Then I go and look for something that I can layer it with. I've got smaller bits over here that I've hung on to. So I'll go through this. Here's a piece of muslin that I have dyed that I think might look good on the pink. So might get a bit of that off. Now with this, as I said, I like the frayed edges, and it's hard to get a frayed looking edge with this without absolutely shredding it. So I try to hold it very firmly, and I just saw it with my scissors because it still gives me a bit of a jagged edge, but it doesn't. I'll come back in here and just sort of saw it gently. Now I'm holding all of that to make sure I'm not pulling the warp and the weft apart. And again, let's finish this off. The sawing motion still gives you a bit of a torn looking edge without it looking like you've cut it. Now this is still too big for this piece, so let's see what it looks like if I open it out a bit. I don't like those rolled edges. Let's fold it in half. It's still quite big. And I think we need another layer. I'm not happy with that. That's not big enough for my liking. It's not too bad because we've got the pink and the pink. Could have a slightly bigger piece. I think I'm happy with that for now, because once I start stitching the pieces in place and adding bits, it should pull it together. So this is the bit that everyone wants to know how I do it. And this is my secret. I'm not concerned about brands. This is my favorite brand, but they've been quite difficult to get my hands on lately. So this is just a cheap brand I got that seems to do the trick. Now I'm mindful when I layer them, I try to offset them, usually up into a corner. So the rule of thirds, I guess it is. It doesn't always work out that way, but that's usually what I'm thinking as I'm doing. Okay, so over here, I don't know if you can see that without it all falling down, I've got a heap of needles already threaded. So I can just pick a colour, and I might go, I think I want pink. So I might go this pink. Now what I do here is I've got an ort jar. I've got another pile over here because I can't fit them all in. So here's my waste threads, and I keep all these because there's a bit here with pink and blue. I don't want the white. Let's get a bit of that yellow if we can. So, bit of thread. Might be too much. I don't want too much. Let's thin this out a bit. I want to keep a few colours in there though if we can. So I want to try and keep the blue, the pink and the yellow. And I've got a bit stuck to my hand. I want to manipulate it a bit to make a bit of a now I want to leave a tail, and I'm going to wrap it a couple of times, and then I'm going to try and tie this off into a knot. So I've got something like this. This one's a bit bulky. And then this is what I start stitching with. I'm just going to tack that down with a couple of stitches. That caught that muslin then, which I don't want it to do, so I've just unhooked that. Just doing a couple more tacking stitches here. Now I'm going to go around the edge of this fabric, and I'm not thinking too much about these stitches because I want them to be rough and rustic and you know, a bit disheveled, and I'm just trying to make sure that muslin's not getting pulled up into those stitches as I go. That's knotted at the back, so I'm just untangling that. I don't want that to knot. There we go. My working thread is too long. I cheat. I always cut my working thread longer than what I should work with. And I say should, it's if you get the correct length, which is about the length of your hand to your elbow. It's not a very long piece, probably about a foot long. It's the optimal length to use so it doesn't tangle, it's less likely to tangle, and you don't fatigue your thread. So the longer the piece of thread, the more fatigued it will become as you stitch. Oh, my poor puppy, she's struggling so badly in this heat. I gave her a puppy ice block earlier. That's one of the other things I made this morning, some popsicles they call them. And the ones I made just had chicken, some veggies and chicken broth. And it's just enough to cool her down on these horrible humid days that we're not used to anymore. Gee, this one's very rough, isn't it? I don't usually do my stitches that big. I'm trying to look around the camera too. Now, I'm just going to flip this over as I'm working so I'm not getting it tangled up. Now another thing I do, it's not necessary, but when I'm stitching like this, normally you would, sorry I've got that tangled now. Normally you would do like a whip stitch, so up on the inside of that piece of fabric and then back down on the outside. Up on the inside, and I say I'm talking about this piece of fabric here, so up on the inside of it and then down on the outside of it. So that's pretty well a whip stitch. But what I do, I've come down on the outside and I'll come up on the outside, down on the inside, up on the inside, down on the outside, up on the outside, down on the inside, up on the inside, down on the outside. Now, the reason I do this, and it's not that big a deal, but when you're stitching a lot of these, it saves thread. So I've got a lovely big knot at the back that I didn't even realise, but that's okay. How can I show you this? That's a pain in the neck having that there. I've been trying not to do that. Some of them I deliberately try to get those knots on the back because I want these loops to hang out the front of the work, but I wasn't trying to achieve that today. And here I'm trying to explain to you why I do the up and down, and you can't see it very clearly on this one. You know what you might be able to see it clearly on? These ones here. So where's one that's clear to see on the camera? So these stitches, these are pretty much the same thing. I've done a whip stitch, so I've gone across this way. Now normally you would go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. You're using twice as much thread doing that. So what I do like a ladder stitch at the back, and you save just a little bit of thread. You're saving about half of what you'd normally use with each stitch on the back of each stitch. So it's not much, but it does add up when you're doing a lot of stitching. Now when I use the glue, hey, go and lay down please. There's no need for you to yell. On your bed. When I use the glue, it's not for gluing purposes. You're not to rely on this glue to hold your piece together. I just use it as a tacking until I sew it all together, because it's not it won't stay forever. It's just a paper glue, and it will certainly wash off if you wash any of these items. I don't plan on washing any of these. Some of the colours I've dyed with are not colour fast, so I'm not planning on putting them in situations where I'm going to wash them. I could colour some that I can wash, but because most of the things I make, most of my journals don't go in the washing machine, it doesn't usually bother me that much. So that is a heck of a lot of thread on that one. I've gone a bit overboard on that one. So I think for this piece, I don't think I want to add anything else. I've certainly got enough thread on there. This stitching that I've done to attach this piece of fabric is enough to hold that cheesecloth in place. So I might just finish that off at the back, and this is a very lazy knot that I'm doing. It depends what kind of work I'm doing, but I'll often not actually do knots. I don't usually always finish off with knots because I don't like that bulk, but because I've already got that big bulk on the front there, it doesn't matter too much today, and I've just made another horrible knot. So there's another fabric cluster to use, and fold him over and add that on as a page tab, or we can just use it as it is. There's another one done. Here's one. This is one I started earlier, and again it's the same thing. I've used my base fabric. I've put another layer here. This one's got 2 layers of fabric on it, and then instead of the thread I've put a bit of ribbon. It's just a bit of ribbon folded in half and tacked down there, and now I'm stitching on this first fabric with a contrast thread. Now this one I think I will have to come back with a second stitch around that piece of fabric because this stitching's not holding that on. I might go back to the whip stitch on this because it's that small, it's not going to make that much difference. I'm not having much luck keeping the knots out today. You can use a thread conditioner, which I do have here somewhere. I haven't got it out to show you, so I'll try and have that ready next time I come on to show you something. And the thread conditioner reduces the fabric from knotting, and it's like it conditions it so it smooths down the fibres, which also reduces how much your thread fatigues. When I say fatigue, it basically means that it gets worn out, it goes fluffy and fuzzy, and then it becomes weak and starts to knot and break and whatnot. And that's why we should use shorter pieces of thread when we're stitching. Every time you pull your thread through your fabric, it's fatiguing it because it's wearing that thread as you pull it through those fibres. Now I think I've had a question as to how I get some of these bits of fabric so small. So some of them are bits that I just pick up, like I might have sewn something. I've sewn a quilt, I've sewn a bag, I've sewn a purse, I've sewn something on my sewing machine. I've used my rotary cutter to cut bits off, or I've trimmed a bit off with the scissors, and I get bits. So here, for example, this was after I made some bandanas for my dog, and these are bits left over. They might have even been, looks like they might have been the corners out of pouches I made. I made a heap of zippered pouches. So it's not often that I'll use triangular pieces of fabric in my stitcheries, in these things. So what I do, you can see the warp and the weft run in this direction, and we know that because these torn edges follow the warp and the weft. So we want to continue to follow that and cut some square pieces. Now what I do, again, as I explained in my last video, I don't like cut edges. So if I use my scissors, these poor scissors are blunt, we're going to have a very clear, definite cut edge. And the majority of the time I don't like that look. I like these torn, frayed edges. So to achieve that, to get smaller pieces, what I do is stick my scissors in along here, and I simply pull it upwards, because most of the time it will follow the warp or the weft, whichever. It will follow those threads in the fabric. Once I've got a starter like that, I'll just tear it off. And then we've got our nice torn edge. This, where I've put the scissors, isn't as torn, but it's not a clean, where did it go? It's definitely not a clean, clear cut like it is if I use the scissors. So again, to come back this way now, when I'm doing these pieces of fabric, I start on the short side, because if I start on the long side, I can't guarantee that I'm going to get it to end where I want it to, and it will often pull away before I get to tear it. So I always start on the short side, again rip it upwards and then tear. So now I've got a nice square piece that I can use. If I want these pieces smaller, I just continue to do the same thing. I wonder if I can use one of these bits that we've just torn off. So again, just tear it upwards. We've got a nice frayed piece of fabric. We've got a cut edge down on the tail here. So again, I just stick the scissors about the middle, tear upwards, and then tear that little bit off. So now I've got a nice little piece of torn fabric that can go in my little piece pile of little bits. Again, here's a piece that I won't use it as it is, so let's still got this cut edge here, so I stick my scissors in and pull upwards and then tear that bottom bit off. And there we have a nice little torn and frayed irregular piece of fabric, which is exactly what I'm after. So all these little bits, except for these, these are probably the only bits I don't really use. You could use them if you like that shape. I don't like that shape in my stitchings. So these are probably the only bits I don't keep. But apart from that, even this little piece, even though it's cut cleanly, I'll probably still use that. Here's that piece we did earlier. This is a funny shape. See this? This is the torn edge. So the fabric's going to run in this direction. So I'm going to lose quite a bit of this. mean, there's all sorts of ways you can, what shapes you can create with these. You just do what you think you'll use or what you're after. But I'll often just sit and cut these and have them ready for when I want to make some clusters. Here's a bit I must have done earlier. Oh yeah, I have cut that by the looks, torn that. Oh, that bit didn't want to come off. There we go. What I look for too is this piece of fabric. I like this darker colour down here, and I wanted to keep that, so instead of making a square, I'm going to make this a bit longer. So I've kept that bit of colour down that end, and then I can use this bit and get another square. Now when you do this, be aware that it will damage your scissors after a while. Just make sure you keep that in mind. And pointy little, these were originally sold to me as bonsai cutters to cut the bonsai plant, but I use them for sewing. They come apart often. I often need to tighten them. Little embroidery scissors will work. It doesn't matter what sort. I've got lots of different ones, but as long as they've got a pointy end, so you can stab these little ones. These have got a bent pointy end because my son did something with them. I don't want to know what. So that's how we get those. I could tell you, I don't want to tell you too much in this video. We'll have nothing for next time. When we get these, what we can do with these, where's one? This might be a good one. We can add some paper cutouts to these, and I won't go through it, I'll save it for another video, but essentially we can get something like this, and then I'll show you next time how I attach those. That's just a watercolor painted heart that I've cut out. So hopefully I've clarified these little clusters for you. If you have any questions about them, please leave it in comments and I will try to answer them in another video when I can. There's quite a few other ways I can do this. I can show you another video on how to do these ones. I can show you how to do, I'll do one to show you how to add the cutouts, the paper cutouts. I've also been doing some stitched words that we can add in. So that's another one I can show you if you like. I can show you how to do these if anyone's interested. We can do some of these. But if there's anything that you'd like me to show you, please leave it in comments or send me a message and I'll set about getting some videos done to show you. Thank you for joining me today. I hope wherever you are that you've had a good day. It's the weekend for me here. I will probably be able to get something done again tomorrow, another video done tomorrow. But yeah, I hope you've learned something today. And again, thank you for joining me and hopefully I'll see you next time.